You're looking at a $113,000 of 18-karat gold with diamonds around it, a Rolex watch. When you think of Ric Flair, you think of a diamond-studded, jewelry-wearing, jet-flying son of a gun with at least 2 women in his limousine at all times. But the story of the Nature Boy has a surprisingly dark and humble beginning. Ric Flair was born on February 25, 1949, a cold day in Memphis, Tennessee. Gray skies cast their shadows on the hospital as Flair's mother signed a form and cried. It was standard procedure. Everything went according to plan. With the nurses bribed and the adoption papers signed, there was no stopping the strange woman who snatched the baby from the nursery and walked nonchalantly out the door. Flair was a victim of child trafficking, one of 5,000 babies taken by the Tennessee Children's Home Society. His mother never got to know him. She was told her baby didn't make it. Conditions in the so-called children's home were horrible. Staff frequently resorted to drugging unruly children. Some were even hung in dark closets or beaten. Those deemed too ugly or too old for adoption were starved and left out in the sun to die. Flair escaped the grips of death and was sold to a wealthy family across the country for an exorbitant price. This event forever shaped the life of the Nature Boy. Richard Flair grew up in Minneapolis. His father was a gynecologist and his mother an actress. They celebrated 2 special dates every year: his birthday, February 25th, and his anniversary, March 18th, the day they adopted him. Flair speaks fondly of his parents, but he admits they couldn't really relate to each other. I didn't do them justice because they were such good people, but I was just wild. He often misbehaved. At 15, he got busted trying to buy alcohol. Later that year, a police officer stopped him on his motorcycle because he was underage. Ric's parents tried their best. They took him to a speech therapist for his lisp and bought him expensive braces, but Ric wouldn't wear them. I'm sure that I disappointed them on a regular basis, every day. Eventually, his parents had enough and sent him to Wayland Academy, a strict boarding school out of state. As an infant, child traffickers had robbed him of his identity. Now he felt abandoned by his own family. They didn't have time to see Ric, and I guess they didn't want to be bothered. As a young man, Richard Flair had a deep-seated longing for attention and validation. When he got into wrestling, he worked hard in pursuit of the spotlight and recognition. But tragedy struck once more before he found success. We were flying to Wilmington, North Carolina, and unbeknownst to us, the guy had altimeter issues and half a tank of gas. The altimeter measured 6,000 feet when the double engine stalled. At that moment, Ric and the others lost consciousness. The pilot tried to level the plane, but it was too late. To the best of my recollection, the first thing I remember was the ambulance technicians, or medics. Due to injuries sustained in the crash, 2 of Ric's colleagues had to end their wrestling careers. The pilot, responsible for the fueling error that caused the accident, died in a coma. Flair, laying in a hospital bed with a broken back, reflected on the experience. I wish I could tell you that it humbled me, and it has when I sit here and talk about it. But back then, I was so hot to get back into the business and so eager to be a star. Inspired by the Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers, Ric dyed his hair blonde and adopted the larger-than-life persona of the Nature Boy. I just started living the life of the Nature Boy. I took my insurance settlement and bought my first new Cadillac. That sums it up right there. Wrestling's sexiest superstar. Please welcome Ric Flair. His brilliant persona, slimy charm, acting skills, and in-ring finesse made him a star. He was the total package and an instant sellout. But this new character came with a dark side. The Nature Boy wasn't a wrestling character. The Nature Boy was me. Flair's newfound success allowed him to invest in his character. He bought a limousine and lived as lavishly in private as he did on screen. One day, his parents visited him at his new $2 million mansion. My mom and dad walked in, looked around, and my dad goes, "What the hell have you done?" I was thinking he'd say, "This is really cool," but he just said, "Who needs all this in their life?" Flair had it all: money, prestige, and the girls. The 1980s are often called the greed decade, or the era of excess, glorifying materialism, status symbols, and the pursuit of success. These themes prominently featured in the public consciousness. Questionable personalities dominated television, creating a perfect mold for the Nature Boy character to become a cultural icon, especially in the US. He was the idol of many big-name athletes. A lot of their swagger came from watching Ric Flair's promos, his diamond rings, his kiss-stealing persona. Growing up, watching Ric Flair was very inspirational to me and to many other hip-hop artists. He represented what we wanted to be. We wanted to be Ric Flair. We wanted to be flamboyant, kiss-stealing, limousine riding, jet flying, all of that. Everyone wanted to be like the Nature Boy, but there could only be one. I knew him before he was Ric Flair. He was Ric Flair. Rick married his first wife, Leslie, in 1971, but he admits that he didn't take his wedding vows seriously. "You know, I wouldn't come home," he said. "More and more, wrestling was fun for me. I couldn't wait to be on the road. I couldn't wait to be with the guys. When I went home, I was bored. The women, the drinking, the partying, that took over." Let me tell you something. If you're wrestling and you're in Houghton, Kansas, and you're going to spend the night there, I'm going to find something to do. I'm not going through that night alone. Please, all my champagne, anything you want, it's all in the world. When Flair walked into a bar, the first thing he'd do was buy everyone drinks. Then, he'd flirt with the women and strut on the tables. WWE announcer and backstage personality Jim Ross recounts spending a night drinking with the Nature Boy. "Can't we just go in, order a couple of drinks, you buy a round, I buy a round, have a little conversation and call it a night?" But no, it's gotta turn into a party. If I couldn't go out, I was miserable. When I was working in an area with no nightlife, all those little towns, man, I was miserable. But the more I got to know him, it was clear he just needed companionship. He needed someone with him so he wouldn't feel isolated. "I remember getting home," one of Flair's children said, "and just watching my dad back out of the driveway, saying, 'I'm not coming home.'" Flair explained, "It wasn't that I wanted to be away from my family, but once you're the world champion, what else is there for you?" "Rick doesn't love Richard Flair," someone close to Flair remarked. "I don't know that he's ever taken the time to get to know him or figure out who he is." From 1972 to 1999, Flair admitted, "I was never home." Flair's children noted that they would receive gifts when he came home, but what he couldn't give them was his time. He would often promise to attend important events, a basketball game, a debate tournament, but in the end, he never showed up. "I do get angry," one child admitted. "How could you neglect your kids like that? That's for sure." "I'm the first to admit I was selfish," Flair confessed. "I just wanted to be Ric Flair." When asked how many women he's been with, Flair chuckled and replied, "Realistically, 10,000. Isn't that terrible?" This man, who was with every woman that would have him since the age of 15, became the best wrestler in the world. "It's my life, my heart, my soul," Flair said. The more successful Ric Flair became, the more Richard Flair faded into the Nature Boy. On screen, he was a braggadocious heel, someone fans loved to see beaten. But off-screen, many aspired to be him. The money, the women, the lifestyle. "I'm not changing my lifestyle," Flair once said. 4 or 5 women every day of my life. But all that glitters is not gold. Ric Flair's character was built on sexist stereotypes, a reflection of the culture in the wrestling business at the time. "That's one of my women right there, baby," Flair would say in his promos, pointing to women in the audience. However, Flair's off-screen behavior was far more troubling. Reports surfaced of him running down hotel hallways wearing nothing but a sock on his genitals. WWE announcer Jim Ross recounted an incident where Flair exposed himself to 2 women in a car. "These incidents paint a dark picture of the Nature Boy," Ross said. Legal documents from Flair's divorce proceedings revealed at least 3 of his 4 ex-wives physically attacked him, likely out of retaliation for emotional harm. While Flair acknowledges and regrets his behavior, he maintains, "I never forced myself on anyone in any way." On May 5, 2002, Ric Flair boarded WWE's private jet for a flight later known as the plane ride from hell. Flair, wearing only his robe, walked the aisle, exposing himself. One flight attendant, Heidi Doyle, later described her experience. "It was a moment of great violation. He took my hand and made me touch him. I felt fear and discomfort. I was just trying to do my job." Doyle took legal action against WWE, resulting in an out-of-court settlement. The plane ride from hell remains one of wrestling's most controversial scandals. While others were punished, Flair, a made man, got away with little consequence. Was it the right thing to do? I don't know, Ross remarked. You decide. When Spartacus came back to WWE in 2001, he continued playing the tried-and-true Nature Boy persona, but he had lost his touch. You could see it. He was a shadow of himself. His confidence was gone. I would try to talk to him, pull him aside, and build him back up. I always kept my self-confidence level high. I would never let it drop. I told him, you know who you are. Don't forget that. Over time, I got comfortable with myself again. Flair was going through financial troubles at the time. He had tried diversifying his income by opening a gym in North Carolina, but his business partners were dishonest and allegedly cheated him out of a significant portion of the invested money. He also struggled with gambling addiction, which spiraled out of control. Multiple divorces, asset divisions, and monthly alimony payments of up to $20,000 added to his financial strain, highlighting his mismanagement of personal finances. Flair invested around $200,000 in a business venture called Ric Flair Finance, but the concept was completely illegal. State authorities shut down the online financial company for non-compliance with financial regulations. To make matters worse, Flair owed several $1 million in debt to the IRS, which led them to seize his WWE earnings. Vince McMahon knew of Flair's financial troubles and often lent him money, especially to help cover divorce-related expenses and alimony payments. Ultimately, Vince advised him to declare personal bankruptcy in 2008, but Flair refused. His pride, developed through years of success as the Nature Boy, prevented him from taking that step. Instead, Flair was determined to work hard to clear his debts, including the $800,000 he owed his boss. All this turmoil culminated in Flair's legendary retirement match at WrestleMania 24. I hated retiring, Flair confessed. The day I retired, I felt sick. The next day, I thought, oh my God, it's over. What are you doing?